The stars had always been calm for humanity. For centuries, people had lived peacefully across many planets and space colonies. Ships traveled between worlds carrying food, goods, and travelers, and there was no fear of war. It was a golden age of peace, and humans had grown used to it. People rarely thought about the past, the stories of war, or the mighty fleets that had once made humanity feared across the galaxy. The United Terran Council, the governing body of human colonies, had dismantled almost all military forces long ago. Big warships, massive fleets, and advanced weaponry that could destroy entire planets were now museums or stored away in forgotten vaults. The galaxy had grown used to peace, and people had even started to forget the legends of the great human warriors, the ones called the war giants. But peace, as history had shown time and again, was fragile. And one quiet night, a strange event shattered that fragile calm. Deep within the outer regions of human-controlled space, far beyond the main colonies, a signal appeared. At first, it was small and weak, almost like a whisper among the static of normal space communications. Scientists and communication officers monitoring the interstellar networks noticed it because it was unlike anything they had seen before. It was not a normal distress call, nor a signal from a civilian ship or satellite. This signal carried a message written in an ancient human code that had not been used for centuries, a code that almost no one alive knew existed. The moment the council and scientists realized the signal's origin, panic and curiosity mixed together in equal measure. How was this possible? No human ship had been in that part of space for hundreds of years. The code itself was a relic, something believed to have been lost during the Great Interstellar Peace Treaty. When the last human fleets were decommissioned, now, somehow, someone or something was calling for help using that ancient code. Analysts quickly began trying to decode the message, working day and night, connecting every piece of information they could find. And when the message became clear, everyone in the communication room froze. It was an SOS, not just any SOS, but a desperate cry for help. The sender was a small alien colony, located in a sector that humanity had never explored in detail. The inhabitants of this colony were clearly intelligent, living in a society that had built cities, farms, and communication networks. But they were in grave danger. Their world was under attack by an unknown force, one far stronger than they were, one that had already destroyed nearby colonies. The message pleaded for immediate help. It was simple and raw. Help us, or we will be destroyed. The United Terran Council convened an emergency session. Leaders, scientists, historians, and former military advisors joined the meeting. Some argued that sending help was too risky. Humanity had dismantled its military precisely to avoid being drawn into wars. There were no large fleets ready for battle. Others argued that the SOS could not be ignored. If humans abandoned a colony calling for help using an ancient code, it could have consequences moral, political, and even cosmic. The debates went on for hours, with voices raised and tempers flaring. Outside the meeting rooms, news of the signal spread quickly. People were both excited and terrified. The galaxy had been quiet for so long that the sudden hint of danger made hearts race. Meanwhile, scientists worked feverishly to trace the origin of the SOS. The signal was complex, carrying not only the plea for help but also information about the attackers, the type of threat, and coordinates for travel. Advanced algorithms, artificial intelligences, and communication satellites were all employed to decode every part of the message. Slowly, a horrifying picture emerged. The alien colony was surrounded by an enemy force far more advanced and brutal than anything humans had encountered in recent memory. These attackers were methodical, precise, and merciless. They moved like shadows through space, leaving destruction wherever they went. And if humans didn't respond soon, the colony and its people would be wiped out entirely. As the full meaning of the SOS became clear, fear gripped the council. But alongside fear, another feeling began to emerge, something almost forgotten, almost mythical. It was the memory of humanity's past might. Somewhere in the distant past, humans had been warriors, conquerors, and protectors of the galaxy. They had fleets that could destroy planets, soldiers who could survive in the harshest environments, and weapons that could reshape worlds. These were the stories of the war giants, the legendary human military forces that had protected colonies and fought enemies across the stars. And now, after centuries of peace, it seemed that the galaxy was reminding humanity of what they once were. Historians dug through archives, pulling out dusty records, old holophs, and data from long deactivated military bases. The more they uncovered, the more astonishing the revelation became. The distress signal used codes that were once employed exclusively by the war giants. No ordinary humans would know them, and no alien species could have copied them perfectly. This meant that whoever or whatever sent the signal was intentionally reaching out to humanity in a way that only the war giants could understand. The council realized the enormity of the situation. This SOS was not random. It was a call for the greatest human warriors in history. At the same time, rumors began to circulate among the population. Some believed that the war giants, or their descendants, still existed somewhere, sleeping in hidden vaults, waiting for the day they would be needed again. Others dismissed the idea as fantasy, insisting that the legends were just stories, exaggerations meant to inspire fear or respect in older generations. But as the council continued to study the signal, even skeptics could not deny the evidence. The alien colony's coordinates, the description of the enemy, and the code itself were all authentic. Humanity faced a real and imminent threat, and the galaxy had somehow found a way to force humans to confront it. The situation grew more urgent by the hour. Space fleets capable of responding had to be reactivated, and fast. But most ships were old, decommissioned or stored in deep space docks that had not been used for decades. Engineers scrambled to prepare vessels, weapons, and supplies. Scientists calculated jump coordinates for the fastest route to the alien colony. The council debated strategies, alliances, and the possible outcomes. Each passing minute increased the risk that the attackers would reach the colony before humans could arrive. Amid all this chaos, a smaller, quieter group worked in secret. They were historians, military archivists, and a few surviving veterans who had trained under the war giants long ago. They studied the SOS not just for its content, but for its hidden meaning. And as they analyzed the codes, they realized something extraordinary. The message contained instructions, old battle tactics, old fleet formations, and even old war protocols that had been designed to awaken the war giants if a true emergency ever arose. The signal was, in effect, a key to humanity's deadliest secret. It was becoming clear that this SOS was not just a cry for help, it was a summons. Someone or something had recognized that humanity's greatest protectors were needed again, and the galaxy, which had long grown complacent in peace, was about to remember that humans were not ordinary beings. The legends of the war giants, long dismissed as myths or tales, were about to become reality once more. As the night deepened across human colonies, communication centers buzzed with activity. Ships were being prepared, codes decrypted, and strategies discussed. Citizens watched the stars, unaware that events unfolding in distant space would soon change their lives forever. Across the galaxy, the alien colony sent out repeated signals, each one more urgent than the last. Every pulse of the SOS carried hope, desperation, and a silent plea that someone, anyone, would answer. Humanity had a choice: to ignore the call and risk letting a world be destroyed, or to rise once again, embracing the legacy of the war giants, and proving that they were still a force to be reckoned with. And somewhere in the depths of space, hidden from all eyes, the first stirrings of those legendary warriors began to awaken. Cryogenic chambers, long-abandoned vaults, and secret bases were beginning to hum with life. Responding to the ancient code embedded in the SOS, humanity was about to confront its past, face its fears, and step into a role it had not held for centuries. The galaxy, which had grown comfortable in the lull of peace, would soon remember the day the war giants returned. The quiet night ended with tension in the air and a sense of anticipation that could be felt across colonies. The SOS had pierced through centuries of peace, and nothing would ever be the same again. Humanity's calm era was over, replaced by a pulse of urgency, hope, and the looming shadow of war. And at that moment, the first real understanding sank in. The galaxy had called, and the war giants were listening. The moment the SOS was decoded, the United Terran Council realized they were facing something far bigger than any ordinary emergency. This was not just a colony under attack. It was a summons that touched something deep in human history, something almost forgotten. Historians and military experts began to piece together what the alien colony's message truly meant. The codes used in the distress signal were unique. They had been developed centuries ago for a fleet so powerful that its very name inspired fear and respect across the galaxy. That fleet was called the War Giants. They were not ordinary soldiers or ships. They were humanity's deadliest force, a combination of advanced technology, unmatched strategy, and warriors who had trained to endure anything. They had been legends, heroes, and protectors, and now the SOS suggested that the galaxy might need them again. For years, the stories of the war giants had been relegated to old archives and dusty history hollows. People told tales of entire enemy fleets being destroyed by a single war giant dreadnought, of planets saved from extinction by these warriors, and of battles so intense that their echoes were still remembered in remote star systems. The war giants had not been just a military force. They had been humanity's shield, its sword, and sometimes its wrath. But after the Great Interstellar Peace Treaty, these forces were decommissioned, ships were mothballed, soldiers were released from duty, and their weapons were dismantled or hidden. Most people alive had never seen a war giant in action and thought of them as myths. Now, with the SOS in hand, the Council realized that the war giants were more than myth. The code used in the signal was a direct connection to them. Someone or something was asking for their help in a way only the war giants could understand. The realization caused a mix of fear and awe. Fear, because if the SOS was valid, then the threat it described had to be terrifying. Because it suggested that the human forces long thought gone might still exist somewhere, hidden, sleeping, waiting for a true emergency to awaken them. The first step was research. Scientists, historians, and former military officers pored over every record they could find. They searched through archives that had not been opened in decades, retrieved data from inactive satellites, and examined blueprints of ancient war giant ships. They discovered detailed records of missions the war giants had undertaken, describing encounters with alien species, battles in unknown star systems, and victories that had been written into legend. Every record reinforced the notion that the war giants were not ordinary forces. They were specially trained, genetically enhanced soldiers, equipped with advanced weaponry and piloting skills that were almost superhuman. Their ships were massive, heavily armored, and designed to survive in the most hostile environments. They were a force built to dominate the galaxy when the need arose. While research continued, political leaders debated what humanity should do. Some were hesitant. Sending ships to the colony could be dangerous. The war giants had been decommissioned for a reason, and no one knew if their remnants were still active or even alive. Engaging the unknown threat could risk human lives and destabilize the galaxy. But others argued that ignoring the call was not an option. The distress signal was specific, detailed, and unmistakably authentic. If the colony was destroyed, humanity would be ignoring a cry for help that had been sent across the stars for centuries, and the consequences could ripple across the galaxy. Every decision carried weight, and time was running out. As the council debated, a small group of experts worked quietly behind the scenes. These were the people who truly understood the significance of the SOS. They were historians who had spent their lives studying the war giants, archivists who had preserved knowledge that most people thought lost, and a few veterans who had trained under the war giants before the peace treaty. They knew that the SOS was more than a call for help. It was also a key, a signal designed to awaken the human forces if a real emergency arose. They realized that somewhere in hidden bases, cryogenic chambers, or deep space vaults, survivors of the war giants might still be waiting, ready to respond to the call embedded in the code. To confirm this, the experts began cross-referencing ancient mission data with the coordinates provided in the SOS. They discovered that the location of the alien colony was near sectors where the war giants had once operated. This was not a coincidence. The SOS was intentional. The colony's inhabitants, perhaps unknowingly, had reached out using methods that could only awaken the most powerful protectors humanity had ever produced. Every line of the message, every coded instruction, carried with it centuries of strategy, ensuring that only the right responders the war giants would understand and act. Meanwhile, tension began to rise across the human colonies. Citizens monitored communications networks, curious and anxious about the unfolding events. Rumors spread like wildfire. Some said that the war giants were returning, that humanity's deadliest warriors were about to rise again. Others claimed it was impossible, that the SOS must be a trick or a malfunction. But even skeptics could not deny the evidence. The alien signal was real. The codes were authentic, and the threat to the colony was imminent. Humanity faced a challenge unlike any it had faced in generations. Engineers and technicians began preparing for the possibility that the war giants could be reawakened. Ships were checked, engines tested, and weapon systems inspected. Even though most of the fleets had been decommissioned, some vessels had been preserved in deep space docks, waiting for emergencies that many thought would never come. The task was enormous. Reactivating ancient war machines required careful precision, knowledge of long-forgotten technology, and the expertise of those who had once operated these ships. Every component mattered, and every delay could cost lives. As preparations continued, the experts focused on locating the hidden war giants. Old records hinted at secret bases scattered across the galaxy, vaults where soldiers had been preserved in stasis pods, awaiting a time when their skills would be needed again. These vaults were protected by complex systems, designed to prevent unauthorized access and to maintain the soldiers in perfect condition. Unlocking them required not only technical knowledge but also an understanding of the ancient protocols. The experts worked tirelessly, combining historical records with advanced AI simulations to identify the most likely locations. The more they investigated, the more incredible the realization became. The war giants were not just legends, they were still real. Somewhere in the galaxy, the descendants of these warriors, or perhaps the warriors themselves, were waiting, sleeping, and ready to respond to the ancient code. It was a thought that filled many with awe. Humanity, long content with peace, had hidden its most powerful protectors, and now those protectors were about to return to a galaxy that had almost forgotten their existence. Meanwhile, the alien colony's SOS continued to repeat across the stars. Each pulse carried the same desperation, the same silent plea for help. The colony's inhabitants were unaware that their signal had reached human ears in such a profound way. They did not know that it was awakening legends, that it was stirring warriors who had been asleep for centuries, and that it was about to change the course of the galaxy. The SOS was more than a message, it was a call that would echo across time and space, demanding action, courage, and the return of the deadliest protectors humanity had ever known. As the council prepared for the next steps, a sense of urgency filled the air. Historians, engineers, and former military officers worked together in unprecedented collaboration. They mapped out strategies, calculated the fastest routes, and ensured that if the war giants could be awakened, they would be ready to act immediately. Every second mattered, and every detail was scrutinized. Humanity was at a crossroads. It could ignore the call, continue its peaceful existence, and risk letting the colony fall, or it could embrace the legacy of the war giants and rise to the challenge. Confronting a threat unlike any it had faced in centuries, the experts finally located the first likely site of the war giants. These stasis pods, an ancient base hidden deep beneath the surface of a remote, uninhabited moon. Records showed that this base had been sealed after the peace treaty, and it contained some of the most elite soldiers in human history. The Council authorized a small expedition to confirm the findings. Engineers and scientists prepared the equipment needed to awaken the soldiers, ensuring that life support systems, cryogenic chambers, and weaponry could be activated without error. The moment approached when humanity's legends would be stirred from their long sleep. For the first time in generations, humans felt a mix of fear, hope, and excitement. The galaxy had sent a signal, a message that could not be ignored. The war giants, sleeping for centuries, might soon awaken, and with them, the might of humanity would rise once more. The alien SOS was more than a plea for help. It was a reminder that humanity's past, its strength, and its duty to protect the innocent were still alive. The galaxy, quiet for so long, was about to witness the return of the protectors it had almost forgotten. And as the preparations continued, the first signs of life began to stir in the stasis chambers. Cryogenic systems hummed, lights flickered in deep in the vaults. The war giants began to awaken, responding to the calls sent across the stars. The SOS had done its work. Humanity's deadliest warriors were no longer legends. They were about to become reality. The stage was set for the next chapter, and the galaxy would never be the same again. The expedition team had arrived at the remote, lifeless moon, their ships hovering silently above the cratered surface. For centuries, this place had remained untouched, its surface scarred by ancient impacts, dust swirling in weak gravity, and the cold vacuum of space pressing down like an invisible weight. But beneath the surface lay humanity's greatest secret, a hidden vault containing the war giants, the legendary warriors who had once ruled the battlefield and protected humanity from countless threats. As the explorers prepared their equipment, a mixture of excitement and nervous tension filled the air. They were about to witness a moment that few had imagined possible, a revival of the deadliest human force in history. That the entrance to the vault was hidden under layers of rock and protective systems, designed to prevent any unauthorized access. Ancient locks, long forgotten, still required precise codes to open. The expedition members worked meticulously, inputting sequences from historical archives, carefully monitoring energy readings and structural integrity. For hours they worked, their hands steady but their hearts racing. Then, with a deep rumble that echoed through the empty moon caverns, the vault door slowly began to open. Inside, the first sight was awe-inspiring. Rows upon rows of stasis pods, sleek metallic chambers glowing faintly with life support energy. Each pod contained a soldier, perfectly preserved, their bodies in suspended animation. Waiting for this very moment, the scientists and engineers moved with both reverence and urgency. They had to ensure that every system in the pods was functioning correctly before initiating the awakening process. Life support systems hummed to life. Monitors began to display vital signs, and slowly, the cryogenic chambers began to warm. Inside, the war giants stirred, sensing the signals that had called them from centuries of sleep. Their minds, trained and disciplined even in stasis, began to awaken first. Memories of past battles, strategies, and codes filled their consciousness. They did not need explanation. The SOS had already told them everything they needed to know. The colony was in danger, and it was their duty to respond. As the soldiers began to awaken physically, they faced the strange sensation of time past. Everything around them was unfamiliar. The ships, the equipment, even the faces of the people assisting them were different from what they remembered. Centuries had passed, yet the war giants remained focused. They were trained to adapt, to survive, and to act with precision under any circumstances. Their bodies, enhanced through centuries-old genetic and mechanical enhancements, adjusted rapidly to the new environment. Muscles that had been suspended in stasis reactivated, reflexes sharpened, and minds recalibrated. Each war giant understood immediately that their mission had resumed, that the galaxy needed them once more. Meanwhile, the expedition team observed in awe. These were not ordinary humans. They were living legends, each one capable of feats beyond normal comprehension. Some had enhanced vision, able to detect threats at incredible distances. Others had neural interfaces allowing them to control complex systems instantly. Their training included strategies for warfare, survival, and diplomacy alike. Every war giant was a perfect combination of mind, body, and machine, designed for one purpose: to protect humanity and respond to threats that no ordinary force could confront. The team felt both inspired and humbled in their presence. The war giants wasted no time. They quickly familiarized themselves with the new ships that had been prepared for their deployment. These vessels, while modern, were designed with compatibility in mind. Built to accommodate the unique needs of the ancient soldiers, Weapon systems, navigation controls, and communication arrays were calibrated to respond to their commands. The war giants integrated seamlessly, as if no time had passed at all. Their presence radiated authority and confidence, and even the youngest members of the expedition could feel the power they carried. Once fully awakened, the war giants convened to plan their response. Although centuries had passed, their tactical minds were unchanged. They analyzed the SOS in detail, studying the coordinates, the nature of the threat, and the potential strategies of the enemy. The alien colony was far from human-controlled space, isolated and vulnerable. The attacking force, identified from the SOS, was both advanced and ruthless, already destroying neighboring worlds. The war giants understood that speed and precision were critical. Any delay could mean the annihilation of the colony and countless innocent lives. They moved with the efficiency and discipline of warriors who had been trained to respond instantly to crises. The first challenge was the journey itself. The colony was located in a distant sector, far beyond the reach of ordinary ships. The path would require navigating through treacherous asteroid fields, unstable star systems, and regions known for gravitational anomalies. For most crews, the journey would have been perilous. For the war giants, it was simply another obstacle to overcome. They calculated trajectories with incredible accuracy, accounting for every variable and potential danger. Their minds worked faster than any computer, able to simulate multiple scenarios in seconds. The expedition team marveled at their speed and precision. Every decision, every calculation, was executed flawlessly. Communication with the alien colony was another critical task. The war giants understood that morale, coordination, and clarity were essential in crisis situations. They activated secure channels and began sending coded messages, assuring the inhabitants that help was on the way. The aliens, unaware that the messages were being sent by the legendary war giants, initially struggled to comprehend the sudden precision and authority in the communications. But as the messages continued, it became clear that something extraordinary was coming to their aid. The colony's inhabitants felt a glimmer of hope, something they had not experienced since the attackers had first arrived. As the war giants approached the alien world, they began to survey the battlefield from orbit. Sensors detected the enemy's formations, their positions, and potential vulnerabilities. The attackers were formidable, but the war giants had seen far worse. Their knowledge of ancient warfare, combined with modern technology, gave them a strategic advantage. They analyzed every angle, predicting the enemy's movements and preparing countermeasures. Their presence alone began to shift the balance. Even the enemy, unaware of the war giants' arrival, sensed an unfamiliar energy in the sector. Something had changed. The tide of battle was about to turn. On board the ships, the war giants prepared their equipment, weapons, and strategies. Each soldier had a specific role, trained to perfection. Some would engage in direct combat, others would provide tactical support, and some would focus on protecting the colony civilians. Every decision was coordinated, every movement calculated, and every action executed with precision. The war giants operated not as individuals but as a single, unified force, a symphony of skill, strength, and intelligence. Even the expedition team, who had come merely to assist, found themselves following the warriors' lead. Their awe mixing with trust. The first signs of engagement were subtle. Sensors detected enemy probes. Scouting ships sent ahead to assess the colony's defenses. In a single coordinated strike, the war giants neutralized these probes without causing collateral damage. It was a demonstration of control, skill, and restraint. The attackers were powerful, but they had never faced warriors like these before. The presence of the war giants brought not just hope to the colony but fear to the enemy. Legends, after all, carry weight even when they are long forgotten. As the war giants prepared to make their first full strike, they also ensured that the alien colony was protected. Defensive systems were activated, energy shields deployed, and evacuation protocols established in case of emergencies. Every measure was taken to ensure that no innocent life would be lost. The war giants understood the responsibility that came with their power. They were not conquerors seeking glory. They were protectors, guided by a code of duty, honor, and loyalty. Their actions would demonstrate to the galaxy that humanity's might was not only terrifying but also righteous. Time moved quickly. Within days, the war giants were fully deployed around the alien colony. Their ships, massive and imposing, formed a protective ring. Sensors scanned the surrounding space constantly, monitoring enemy movements and predicting attacks. The colony's inhabitants watched in awe, seeing for the first time a force that could truly protect them. They did not know the names of these warriors nor their history, but they understood one thing clearly: help had arrived, and it was unlike anything they had ever imagined. The war giants prepared for the coming battle, confident but cautious. They knew that the enemy would strike soon, and that their skills would be tested to the limit. But for the first time in centuries, they were awake, alert, and ready to fulfill the mission that had been waiting for them. Humanity's most legendary warriors had returned, their presence a beacon of hope and a warning to any who threatened peace. What the galaxy was about to witness: the power, skill, and discipline of the war giants once more. And as the first enemy ships appeared on the horizon, The war giants were ready, their minds sharp, their weapons primed, and their resolve unshakable. They prepared to engage in a battle that would demonstrate why humanity's deadliest warriors were called the protectors of the galaxy. Every movement, every decision, and every strike would be executed with perfection. The war giants had awakened, and the galaxy would never forget their return. The alien colony had barely begun to breathe easier when the first signs of the enemy appeared. Far beyond the colony's atmosphere, massive ships emerged from the darkness of space, moving with terrifying precision. The attackers were an ancient and ruthless species known as the Ravagers, feared across many star systems for their brutality and efficiency. They had discovered the colony long before the SOS reached human ears and were determined to destroy it before any reinforcements could arrive. Their ships were sleek, armed with devastating weaponry, and their pilots ruthless, skilled in tactics honed over centuries of warfare. The colony, isolated and unprepared, had little chance against such an assault, but the moment the war giants appeared in orbit, everything changed. Sensors detected the massive human vessels as they took position around the colony, forming an almost impenetrable shield. The war giants moved with precision and calm, their massive dreadnoughts cutting through space like shadows, their weapon systems activated, scanning for threats and calculating optimal firing sequences. Even from orbit, the alien colony could sense the presence of these legendary warriors. It was more than technology, it was an aura of command, control, and unyielding power. The Ravagers had not encountered humans like these in centuries, and instinctively, they understood the danger. The first engagement began when scouting ships from the Ravager fleet attempted to probe the colony's defenses. Within moments, the war giants responded, targeting systems locked onto the enemy. But the war giants did not strike recklessly. They neutralized the probes without causing unnecessary damage, demonstrating control and precision that even the Ravagers could not anticipate. The attackers were intelligent and adaptive, but facing the war giants was different. This was no ordinary defense force. It was a unit trained to dominate entire battlefields, combining centuries of tactical knowledge with advanced technology. As the main fleet of Ravagers approached, tension mounted. The war giants coordinated their ships with incredible efficiency, deploying defensive formations that were both flexible and impenetrable. Energy shields flared to life, weapon arrays aligned with deadly accuracy, and communication lines between the ships thrummed with precise timing. Every war giant knew their role and executed it without hesitation. Their training, discipline, and experience gave them an advantage far beyond what the Ravagers expected. Even the smallest tactical adjustment was calculated to exploit enemy weaknesses while protecting the colony. The Ravagers, confident in their numbers and firepower, launched a full-scale assault. Massive energy beams and missile salvos streaked across space, aimed at breaking the defensive perimeter, but the war giants were ready. Their ships absorbed their attacks, using both armor and energy manipulation to minimize damage. Countermeasures were deployed with perfect timing, redirecting attacks, intercepting missiles, and neutralizing enemy weapons before they could strike. The first volleys of battle were a test, and the war giants passed with unmatched precision, showcasing why they had been legends long before humanity had dismantled its fleets. The war giants did not limit their actions to defense. They knew that a direct strike against the enemy was the most effective way to protect the colony. Coordinating across their fleet, they launched counterattacks with devastating accuracy. Enemy ships were disabled, some completely destroyed, and the Ravagers began to realize that they had underestimated the humans. Their formations wavered, their commanders grew anxious, and their attacks became less coordinated. The presence of the war giants had not only defended the colony but had also disrupted the enemy's plans entirely. Fear, something foreign to the Ravagers in this sector, began to spread through their ranks. From the colony's perspective, the battle was on. Citizens watched from observation decks as colossal human ships engaged the attackers with unmatched skill. Energy beams cut through space, explosions rocked the void, and massive vessels maneuvered with precision that defied comprehension. The colony had never seen anything like this. Hope, something that had nearly vanished in the face of the Ravagers' assault, returned. The inhabitants realized that they were witnessing legends. Warriors who had been thought lost to time, actively protecting them from certain annihilation. Their fear slowly turned into trust and admiration. Despite the overwhelming force of the war giants, the Ravagers were not defeated immediately. They were adaptive and intelligent, capable of analyzing tactics mid-battle. They began to change their strategy, attempting flanking maneuvers and concentrated attacks on weaker points in the human fleet. But the war giants anticipated such moves. Using decades of combined combat experience, they adjusted formations, redirected firepower, and implemented advanced strategies that the Ravagers had never encountered. Each move by the enemy was countered with precision, and the battle shifted further in humanity's favor. The war giants' presence also had a psychological effect. The attackers, sensing that they were no longer in control, began to hesitate, miscommunicate, and make errors that a more confident fleet would never have made. The war giants exploited every mistake, striking with surgical precision. Small groups of enemy ships were isolated and destroyed before they could regroup, while others were forced to retreat. The skill, discipline, and sheer presence of the human warriors turned the tide of the battle. Legends that had been thought dead were alive, and their return was decisive. During the battle, the war giants also coordinated directly with the alien colony to ensure that civilians were safe. Evacuation routes were established, protective shields extended over critical areas, and resources were allocated to defend vulnerable populations. The war giants understood that their mission was not only to destroy the enemy but to preserve life wherever possible. Their actions demonstrated a unique combination of power, intelligence, and morality qualities that set them apart from any other force in the galaxy. As the battle progressed, the Ravagers realized the futility of their assault. Their fleets were being systematically dismantled, their attacks neutralized, and their formations broken. They had never encountered warriors with such precision, coordination, and understanding of strategy. The war giants were not just soldiers, they were an unstoppable force. Legends come to life, and their arrival had changed the battlefield entirely. The Ravagers faced a choice: continue the fight and risk total annihilation, or retreat and preserve what remained of their forces. Eventually the decision was made. The Ravagers began to withdraw, retreating from the colony and leaving the war giants in control of the battlefield. Their morale shattered, they fled into the depths of space. Aware that the legends of humanity were more than stories, they were reality. The colony, once on the brink of destruction, was saved. The war giants had fulfilled their mission with efficiency, skill, and honor, proving that even after centuries, humanity's mightiest warriors could still dominate the galaxy. The alien inhabitants, witnessing the aftermath of the battle, were awestruck. Their world had been saved not by chance, but by warriors whose very existence was legendary. They could not comprehend the full scope of the war giants' abilities, but they understood enough to know that their lives had been preserved by beings of extraordinary power and discipline. The gratitude of the colony was immense, and for the first time in centuries, humans and aliens alike shared a moment of triumph born from courage, skill, and loyalty. Even as the immediate threat receded, the war giants remained vigilant. They understood that, while this battle was won, the galaxy was still filled with dangers. They maintained defensive positions around the colony, repaired their ships, and prepared for any potential return of the Ravagers or other threats. Their mission was not over. The SOS had awakened them, and as long as the galaxy needed protection, they would remain ready. The impact of the battle extended far beyond the colony. News of the war giants' return and their decisive victory spread across neighboring systems. Allies rejoiced, enemies panicked, and the legends of humanity's deadliest warriors were no longer confined to history books. They had returned to the galaxy, fully alive and fully aware of their power. The entire sectors took notice, realizing that humanity had awakened a force capable of changing the balance of power across the stars. Through it all, the war giants remained focused on their duty. They had not returned for glory, revenge, or recognition. Their purpose was simple and absolute: to protect those in need, respond to the call for help, and ensure that no innocent lives were lost to forces of destruction. Their actions during the battle exemplified the qualities that had made them legendary, combining discipline, intelligence, and a deep sense of honor. By the end of the engagement, the colony was secure, the enemy had been repelled, and the war giants had proven their might once more. The SOS had achieved its purpose, awakening humanity's greatest protectors and reminding the galaxy that legends, though long dormant, could return when most needed. The war giants had not only saved a world, they had sent a clear message across the stars. Humanity's guardians were awake, vigilant, and ready to defend the galaxy against any threat. The aftermath of the battle left a lasting impression. The colony rebuilt, morale soared, and the war giants' presence ensured that no further attacks would occur in the near future. To the galaxy, having witnessed the return of these legendary warriors, began to remember the power, discipline, and commitment that had once made humanity a force to be reckoned with. And while the battle with the Ravagers was over, the war giants knew that their mission was only beginning. The galaxy was wide, threats were many, and the call for help would continue. They would respond, as they always had, with unmatched skill, honor, and resolve. The battle had ended, the Ravagers had fled, and the alien colony was safe. Yet for the war giants, there was no celebration, no applause, and no sense of finality. They understood that victory was just one step in an ongoing journey. The galaxy was vast, filled with countless systems, each holding potential threats and innocent lives that might need their protection. They were aware that the SOS had awakened them not for fame or glory, but to remind humanity and the galaxy alike that there were guardians who would rise whenever the call came. Their presence was a warning and a reassurance, a living testament to the enduring strength and responsibility of humankind. The inhabitants of the colony watched the war giants with awe and a newfound respect. They could hardly comprehend the magnitude of what had occurred. Their attackers, who had seemed invincible just days ago, had been repelled with surgical precision. Cities had been saved, lives preserved, and the balance of power shifted in their favor. Yet, the war giants did not linger for accolades. They focused on immediate necessities, repairing damaged systems, stabilizing energy networks, and ensuring that no residual threats remained. Even as relief washed over the colony, the giants maintained a disciplined vigilance. Their very posture, calm but alert, reminded everyone that this was more than a temporary victory. It was the return of guardians who would watch over the galaxy. Back in human-controlled space, news of the war giants' return spread rapidly. Reports of the battle, transmitted through secure channels, described not just the military success, but the awe-inspiring presence of these legendary warriors. Systems that had once relied solely on diplomacy and trade for security now began to reevaluate their understanding of human power. Allies felt a surge of hope, realizing that they were protected by forces beyond imagination, while rivals reconsidered any thought of aggression, aware that they might face not just humans, but humanity's most feared defenders. The war giants' reputation, which had long been a historical legend, was now a living reality once more. Despite the overwhelming respect and awe they inspired, the war giants remained humble and focused on duty. Their mission was not to conquer or rule, but to protect and respond to crises wherever they arose. They returned to the alien colony with the same care they had shown in battle, ensuring the population had food, water, medical aid, and energy for their cities. Every action was precise, efficient, and intended to restore normalcy. They repaired damage caused by the Ravagers' assault and enhanced defensive systems so that the colony could survive future threats without immediate human intervention. Their work was meticulous, reflecting centuries of training and an unwavering commitment to safeguarding life. As they worked, the war giants began to understand the broader implications of their awakening. Humanity had for generations enjoyed peace and had almost forgotten the consequences of neglecting their martial legacy. The galaxy had grown complacent, assuming that humanity had abandoned its potential for war. Yet, the SOS had proven that threats could emerge anywhere, at any time, and that there were forces in the universe who would exploit weakness. The war giants realized that their existence was not only about responding to individual emergencies, it was about maintaining a balance across the galaxy, preventing chaos, and preserving life on a cosmic scale. The alien colony, once terrified and on the brink of annihilation, began to rebuild with newfound hope. People worked together, inspired by the courage and precision of the war giants. The presence of these legendary warriors had a psychological effect as much as a practical one. Even those who had lived through the Ravagers' assault felt emboldened by the knowledge that humanity's deadliest protectors were watching over them. Schools reopened, commerce resumed, and the fear that had gripped the colony for so long slowly faded. The war giants' influence extended beyond mere defense. They instilled a sense of security and trust, showing that even in the vast, dangerous expanse of space, there could be order, protection, and justice. Meanwhile, the war giants themselves reflected on the centuries that had passed during their stasis. They had awoken to a galaxy different from the one they had left, one that had grown used to peace and assumed humanity would never need to take up arms again. Yet, the fundamentals had not changed. There were still threats, still innocent lives at risk, and still responsibilities that demanded their attention. Their training, discipline, and sense of duty remained intact, and they approached their mission with both humility and resolve. Each war giant understood that they had been given a second chance to serve, and they intended to honor that chance fully. As the days passed, the war giants coordinated with human authorities, advising on defensive strategies, resource allocation, and emergency response protocols. They were not rulers, but guardians, providing wisdom that spanned centuries of interstellar conflict. Their knowledge of ancient tactics, combined with modern technology, allowed them to design systems capable of withstanding even the most sophisticated attacks. Human engineers, scientists, and leaders worked alongside the war giants, learning from them and adapting to their methods. The interaction was not just practical, it was educational, a passing of knowledge from legends to the current generation, ensuring that humanity could better protect itself in the future. The galaxy, meanwhile, began to take notice. Neighboring star systems learned of the battle and of the war giants' decisive intervention. Fear spread among hostile forces, while hope reached the allies and innocent civilizations who had previously felt vulnerable. The return of humanity's deadliest warriors altered political calculations, trade relationships, and military strategies across multiple sectors. Diplomats now negotiated with the understanding that humans had regained an almost mythical defensive capability. The galaxy was waking up to a new era, one shaped by the presence of warriors who had been thought lost to history but for the war giants. The changes in perception were secondary. Their focus remained on the mission. They continued to patrol the region, ensuring that the Ravagers or any other threat could not return undetected. They engaged in simulations and exercises to sharpen their coordination, tested weapon systems, and monitored vulnerable systems across nearby star sectors. They knew that the SOS had been just the first call, the initial spark that reminded them and the galaxy that humanity had protectors who would rise when most needed. Their vigilance ensured that the colony, and potentially other systems, would remain safe. During this period, interactions with the alien inhabitants also revealed an unexpected dimension. The war giants were not merely feared or respected, they were admired. The inhabitants learned from them, studied their methods, and even sought advice on leadership, defense, and coordination. The war giants, while trained for battle, also possessed qualities of strategy, ethics, and discipline that transcended mere combat. They taught the colony how to organize its defenses, manage resources efficiently, and respond to emergencies with precision. The lessons extended beyond warfare. They were about responsibility, duty, and the importance of protecting life as weeks passed. The war giants realized that their awakening was more than a single mission. It was a statement to the galaxy. Humanity, long thought peaceful and defenseless, had returned to claim its place as a guardian force. The SOS had triggered not just a response but a resurgence, a reestablishment of influence and protection across the stars. The galaxy, which had grown complacent in the absence of conflict, now understood that legends could return, and that humanity's guardians would act without hesitation when lives were at stake. Even the political leadership of the United Terran Council understood the implications. They coordinated closely with the war giants, learning to integrate the insights of centuries-old warriors into modern governance and defense. Policies were adjusted, fleets were restructured, and strategic priorities were reassessed. The war giants' awakening had not only saved the colony, it had reminded humanity of its responsibility and its potential, reshaping the way the galaxy viewed its place in the interstellar order. Finally, after ensuring the colony was fully stabilized and that no immediate threats remained, the war giants prepared for their next steps. They would not remain indefinitely. Their presence was intended as both a shield and a signal. They had demonstrated their power, protected the innocent, and reminded the galaxy of humanity's enduring strength. But the universe was vast, filled with unknown dangers and emergencies yet to arise. The war giants would remain alert, ready to respond wherever the call for help reached them next. Their legacy, once thought dormant, was now fully alive, and they carried the knowledge that their mission was far from over. As the war giants departed from the colony, they left behind more than protection. They left hope, inspiration, and a renewed sense of security. The galaxy, which had been quiet and uncertain, now recognized that humanity's defenders were awake, disciplined, and capable of responding to any threat. The SOS had accomplished its purpose. It had awakened not only warriors, but a reminder of what humanity could achieve when its deadliest protectors answered the call. The alien colony resumed life, enriched by the experience and forever changed by the war giants' intervention. Children learned stories not just of past legends, but of heroes who had appeared before their very eyes. Leaders gained wisdom from warriors whose insight spanned centuries, and across the galaxy, news of the war giants' deeds spread, leaving an indelible mark on the minds of allies and enemies alike. The call had been answered, lives had been saved, and the galaxy remembered that humanity's mightiest warriors were no longer just a tale. They were very real, vigilant, and ready to protect whenever needed. And so, as the war giants disappeared into the depths of space, their mission continued. The galaxy, once peaceful and complacent, now understood that legends could awaken, that guardians could rise from centuries of slumber, and that humanity's promise to protect the innocent was not a relic of the past, but a living truth. The SOS had changed everything, and the war giants' presence ensured that the galaxy would never forget that humanity's deadliest warriors had returned.